Hello everyone, and welcome to the April 2018 update of the Power BI desktop. As always, we have lots of exciting features, the first of which is a new Q&A experience for consumers. So, we've been working on integrating Q&A into the desktop, and we started that off a couple of months ago with the Ask a Question feature that lets you, as a report author, just ask a question and have that become a chart on your report. And we've had a consumption version of Q&A for a really long time for consumers in dashboards, where they could just ask questions of the data set and not necessarily be able to pin that back to the dashboard they were just consumers of, but they could ask their questions and learn answers. So this month we have a merging, I guess you could say, of those two experiences. So now with what we're calling the Q&A Explorer, we have an experience where a consumer who's just looking at a report can click a button and get a dialogue that lets them ask questions about their data. They don't have edit permissions, they can't add those questions back to the report as visuals, but they can be able to consume extra things that they might not have been able to if they were just stuck with whatever the report author created. So let me show you this experience. So I'm going to start by showing you the consumption experience once the report author has set it up and published, and then I'll go back and show you how you can create this experience. So as a consumer, the way it will work is I'll be able to click on a button, an image, or a shape that has been tied to this Q&A Explorer action, and then all I have to do is click on that, and I'll get the Q&A Explorer where I can start asking some questions. I could have some suggested questions on the side here that the author has predefined that I can click on and look at. And then I can go in and I can, by just clicking, just like Q&A in the service or Q&A for report editing, when clicking on a value, I can go in and I can change whatever is being used in this chart to something. So like it says subcategory, I can see manufacturers, or I can just go in and I can delete it all the whole question, and start asking my own. Sales by subcategory. And just like Q&A everywhere else, I get what we believe is the best chart to answer that question. And I can continue to modify my questions, add qualifiers, filters, pick the chart type, and just continue to find the answer to whatever question I might have. And since this is a consumption experience, I cannot save any of this, but it will let me answer my question. So when I hit the close button, nothing changed on my report, and if I go back, I'll begin to see the starting position of the first suggested question in the list. Now to set this up, I'm going to go back to the Power BI desktop and show you how I did that. So to start using Q&A, you're going to tie it to a button, an image, or a shape, just like you would tying something to a bookmark or to our back experience. And you'll do that by going to the action card. And Q&A will be an option, just like the back and bookmark options that you've previously had. And once you set that as an action, you can, as an author in the Power BI desktop or in edit mode of the Power BI service, you can control click and you'll get that same dialogue experience, except for when you're in edit mode, you have a couple of extra things that you can do. So I'm going to start by asking my question. So let's say I want to know units by category. And if I like the question, and I want to fix my typo there, all I have to do is hit this add button, and then it's added as a suggested question. And I can continue to go in and modify that so I can see my sales table sorted by the category if I wanted to, or I could change that to sales amount and see the sales. And I continue to ask questions and add them in to my dialogue here. And if I change my mind and I want to remove a question, all I have to do is hit the X and it will get removed from this list. And once I'm done asking all of my questions, all I have to do is hit save and close, and those suggested questions are saved for that specific button. And now whenever I publish this, my consumer has access to those. There are a couple of other things you can do with this Q&A dialog experience as well, such as ask for a page back as well as just a chart. So, and you may, if you know Q&A and views in the service, you've probably seen this before. But let's say I wanted to be able to return this Germany page to a consumer who was using that Q&A experience. What I would do is I would go to the page information card, and I would make sure that the Q&A toggle was on, and then I could use this box underneath the toggle to add in a couple of other aliases for that page as well. So if someone was searching not just for Germany, but for Germany sales data or Germany information, they could also get this page back. Additionally, I can add parameters to this page as well. So if I wanted them to be able to, a consumer to get this page back through Q&A Explorer, and also be able to filter it by something, what I can do is in the page level filters, I can add as many filters as I want and check this require single selection box. And that means, what it means for the filter itself is that you can never have more than one of these selected. You have to single select them. But for Q&A specifically, it means that a consumer is going to not only get this page back, but they have to specify one of these filters when getting the page. So they can ask for Germany sales information for audio or for computers, and they'll get this page back filtered to that specific value. Something to note is that drill-through filters automatically require single selection, so those will become parameters as well. So now that's all set up, I can go to my Q&A experience and just ask a question to get that page back. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to type Germany for audio. And Germany's that page, and audio is the filter that I wanted, and now I'm getting back that page filtered to audio. A couple of other things to be aware of when using the Q&A Explorer. The first is that our Q&A Explorer does not work in publish to web or in mobile devices. It'll still work whenever you're embedding it in, say, an application, but publish to web where it's anonymous consumption or in your mobile device, whenever someone clicks on this button, nothing will happen. They won't get the dialog returned back to them. Something else to also be aware of is that whenever a person is using Q&A Explorer, all the filters from the page that they were looking at before they launched it will be flowed through to that dialog as well. So for example, I have a filter here for net satisfaction. I wanted to only see products that have a net satisfaction of 2 to 6. And so whenever I launched this Q&A dialog, I was getting data back only for sales that had that satisfaction between 2 and 6. A good way to show that is, let me just cross-highlight by computers here. And now whenever I launch the Q&A Explorer, you'll see that I'm only getting computers back for this question because it's being filtered down to just the category equals computers. And whenever this is happening, you will get a notification at the bottom of the dialog telling you that filters from the source page have been applied. We are doing this because we want to make it so that people can ask questions about the data they're actually looking at. So if they're looking at sales below a certain amount and then they launch this Q&A experience to ask their questions, we want to make sure that they're only looking at data for those cases where the sales are below that amount. The last thing to know is that all of those suggested questions that you're tying are tied to that individual button that you're launching Q&A from. So if I added another button tied to Q&A on that Germany page, I would have a completely different set of suggested questions than I would on the Q&A button on this page. And that really allows you to be completely flexible for what questions you're showing to users and make sure that they're contextual to the page that they're actually looking at. If you were paying close attention while I was showing you the Q&A Explorer, you may have noticed that I was using a new object on my canvas to actually launch that Explorer, and that is buttons. we've noticed that a lot of people, as they were using bookmarking in the back experience with drill through and combining all these things, they were creating something that felt much more like an application. It was still a report that had all this information in it based off of their data, but they were having actions being triggered and things were changing based off of how the users were interacting with the reports. And so we wanted to introduce a new tool that could help make your reports feel much more interactive and much more app-like. So with that in mind, we introduced buttons, which let you have, whenever you're wanting to launch this new Q&A experience or ties an action to a bookmark, these buttons are interactive. So as a user hovers over it, things will change. They will, whenever they're pressing down, selecting the button, it will change as well to show that they're pressing. And so it's very much like the buttons you may have already seen around on the internet and other applications. So let me show you how to take advantage of these new buttons. So like I said, this is a button, and you can tell that because as I'm hovering, I'm seeing things change. So it got darker and the text got a little bit bigger. And whenever I press down on it, it also changed a little bit. I have it going from a dark gray to a black. And so it is responding to my mouse and how I'm interacting with it. To insert this button, you can do that from the ribbon. So there's a new buttons option in the insert section of the home ribbon, right next to the text box, images, and shapes. When I click on that drop down, I get a few options. So like left and right arrows for navigation. We have a reset option if you want to use buttons to, for example, clear all the filters and go back to how you saved the report. You have the back button that you already know for drill through. We also given some informational eyes and question mark help icons. And of course, a bookmark and Q&A icon as well to take so that you can launch bookmarks or Q&As from this. And then if you don't really want any of these icons and you want your own custom text, you can do that as well by inserting blank. And that will insert a button with no icon. And once you pick out your icon, and I'm going to go, let's say, for the reset icon, you'll see it will insert it with that icon, and you can then start editing it. The things that make this unique compared to, say, all the other things on our canvas are these first 4 cards in the formatting pane. The button text, which is off by default. You can go and turn that on and type in any text you want. So let's say I wanted this to just say reset. And then I can go in here and I have lots of different text controls for formatting. You can change the font. I can increase the font size. I can change both the vertical and horizontal alignment. I can increase padding from the text, so I can, scooch it over to the left here. And I can also change the color. So let's say I want to go with this kind of rosy red color. I can also edit the icon, so I can change, again, the padding, similar stuff, padding, alignment, change the color of the icon also to that kind of rosy red color. I can increase or decrease the weight of the icon. And I can change the transparency of the icon as well. And at this point, if I change my mind about what icon I wanted, I can also change that here. I can remove it, change it to blank, or pick one of the other options. We also have fill for the button, so I can turn on and off fill and control the transparency of that fill. And if I wanted to, I could also add an outline to my button and control the transparency, the weight, and how round the corners of that button is. So once I like how my button looks, say, by default, then I'm going to want to go in and I'm going to want to customize what it looks like for those other states. So that hovering and when I'm selecting the button by clicking on it. I can go in and customize that as well using this drop down. So each of these 4 cards that I walked through has the same drop down. The default is, of course, the state you just see whenever you're looking at the button. And then you can go and customize the hovered state. So I'm going to want to change my button to be purple whenever it's being hovered over both the text and the icon. And once I'm happy with how that looks, I can go and hover over it and see that effect. So I have the dark purple here and kind of like the reddish purple on the icon only on hover. And then if I want to, I could also go and change the selected state as well. So that's the press state. And for this, I'm just going to make the icon a little bit fatter when it's being pressed down. And of course, as you change things in the formatting pane, you can go over to the button and experience the changes. And now I have a button. The last step to do is decide what I want that button to do. And so just like for images and shapes, I can do that through the actions card. And I'll turn the action on and I'll pick what I want it to do. And I'm going to just want it to trigger a bookmark that resets this page to the default experience. So now that I've done that, and I click on this button, when I click on it, it will trigger that bookmark and set everything back. The Q&A button that I was using earlier is set up similarly. I had text that I had happened to center inside the icon, and I have just fill but no outline set up. And of course, for each of the different states, on hover, I have the weight get a little bit bigger on the icon, and on selected for the icon, I changed it to black. I did similar stuff for the button text. The only difference is on the action card, instead of a bookmark, I had picked Q&A. And so these buttons just let you take your report a step further in customizing them and turning them really into this interactive experience that's enjoyable for your consumers to use. Next on our list is a new formatting feature that we have for combo charts. Several months ago, we introduced line styles for line charts, and this lets you format your lines to be dashed or dotted and also represent that nicely in the legend as well. And at that time, the combo chart did not have these same formatting options. Finally, now we are enabling that for combo chart as well. So whenever you are looking at your combo chart under the shapes card, you'll be able to format the lines the same way you would on a line chart. So let's take this combo chart here, and I'm going to want to format these two lines differently. So I'm going to go into the formatting pane, and under the shapes card, I now have this line styles options, and by default it's solid, which is what you're used to, but I can choose to go and make it dashed or dotted, and by just changing this drop down, it is affecting both lines together. But I can go and turn on this customize series option in the pane, and then I can separate the lines differently. So for the net satisfaction, instead of dotted, I'm going to go in and make that one dashed. And you'll notice as I am making changes, those changes are also being reflected in the legend. My legend is actually showing for the lines a line that's representing the same experience you're seeing. So the purple dotted line matches the purple dotted line in the chart. And that's because under the legends card, I have set the line style to show the lines itself. So I could have, if I didn't want to see the lines, I just wanted to have that same kind of like circle default experience that we have for all of our charts in the legend. I could change that to markers, or I could see both. If I was using markers on the line charts as well, in the lines on the combo chart, I could pick lines and markers, and those would be represented. Or I can choose to, even if I was using markers on the lines in this combo chart, I don't want those to show up, only the lines in the legend. So you have full flexibility for how you want your legend to look as well as you start taking advantage of these the line styles feature. Just like last month with our improvement for where the default placement of visuals was, this month we are also introducing another improvement that should just help you reduce the amount of clicking you're going to have to do when creating your reports, which is to improve the default sort for our visuals. We've introduced some logic into all of our visuals so that we will more than likely pick the default sorting that you're looking for without you having to go and manually set it. First, we're going to go and we're going to check and see if you specified a field to sort by using the sort column by button from the modeling ribbon. And if you've picked a specific column you're going to want to sort by, we will always respect that. Next, we check and see if the column we're sorting by is a date, and if that's the case, then we will sort your chart chronologically, so the oldest dates are first and it ends on the newest dates. And then after that, we will always sort your charts numerically descending. So if you have a measure, you're going to see the category with the most of that measure, so like sales. So the category with the most sales first and the one with the least sales last. And we're always going to sort by default numerically if you don't already have an order by or a date field in your chart. We found that that's what most people are wanting to sort by and what they've been manually setting when that wasn't the case. And now that we're trying to save you those few extra clicks of having to pick that sort, it should just be there for you by default. And of course, as always, if you have manually set a sort, we will not override that. You'll always see the sort that you picked. The last reporting feature this month is that we are finally making the numeric slicer generally available. So this is the slicer experience where if you have a numeric column, you'll see a range slider instead of the list slicer by default. So now you don't have to go and turn on a preview switch to take advantage of that. Everywhere you're using your report, web and desktop, this will be your default experience for numeric columns. We really want to thank everyone who gave us really good feedback over the long period of time that this feature was in preview, and we're very happy to finally have it out there generally available for everyone. Under Analytics, the first feature is the ability to update your linguistic schema. So if you couldn't tell, we have been working really hard to integrate Q&A more and more into your experience for reports. And so we want to make it really easy for you to make sure that your consumers are also getting a good experience with Q&A. So, that includes things like synonyms, so that whenever, they're asking for teacher, they also can get data for professor. Or as they're saying sales, they also can get the same answers if they ask sales amount. And the way to get this really good experience with Q&A is to be able to, if you want to, edit your linguistic schema. And so what we've done is we've added to the modeling tab the ability to export out your linguistic schema and make edits to it. It will be a file that you can edit in any text editor, and then you can go back, and once you've made these changes, you can import it back into the desktop, and all of those changes you made will start being reflected in your Q&A experience. I'm not going to go into any more detail on this in this video specifically, because we are going to be creating a blog dedicated to Q&A and linguistic schemas and all the best practices there. So make sure to watch out for that blog to learn more about this. We also have a new DAX function this month as well, combine values. This DAX function is all around allowing multi-part keys to be handled in a more efficient way whenever you're using direct query. Power BI doesn't directly support relationships that use multi-part keys, so a common workaround has been to create a calculated column on each table that combines all the different values from the keys with just some separator. So for example, if you want to have multiple keys of shipment and order line, people have been creating one key column which concatenates order line, a comma, and then line ID. And then using this, of course, your relationship can be defined as normal. The problem with this is that whenever you're using direct query, is with cases which require a join between the two tables, that will send a SQL query that joins on an expression. This will often result in indexes no longer being used, and therefore it's a much less efficient query. Our new combined values DAX expression, we'll take all these different multi-keys as augments of arguments of the function with a separator, for example, colon or a comma or something else. And it will concatenate the values of these expressions with the given separator. The difference for this is that while this new calculated column is still being used in the relationship just as before, it is optimized such that when joining using this relationship, the condition defined in the SQL query decomposes back to use the underlying columns. So from my example earlier, the order ID and line ID directly instead of that concatenated column. And this will generally result in a much more efficient SQL query. As a side note, another good use case for this DAX function could also be just wanting to join a bunch of values together with a common delimiter. Previously, to do that, you would have had to use the concatenate function and have embedded nested concatenate functions within each other. With combined values, you just define the separator and then all the columns you want to combine. So that will be a much easier way to do that action as well. For our custom visual section, the first feature I want to talk about is an improvement to the custom visual experience. So we recently released a feature called organizational visuals, which was a way for your IT group in your company to basically approve certain visuals and put them through the admin portal in a place where you can access them whenever you are connecting to the marketplace for custom visuals through Power BI. So in addition to all of the publicly available visuals, you would have another tab where you could access your organizational visuals. And these could be public visuals that the company has deemed as something that they want everyone in the company to use, or ones that they verified are high quality visuals, or it could be a visual that the company has made themselves that they want to share out with everyone in your company. When we first released this feature, we released it as preview, and we are very excited that we can now announce that that feature is generally available. Just to remind you of what this feature is, I'm going to go and you'll find these organizational visuals from Marketplace. And of course, by default, you'll see the publicly available store visuals, but you also have this new tab called My Organization. And whenever you click it, if you're like me, your IT company hasn't published any custom visuals for your organization, but if your IT team has done that, you would see them here listed, just like you see the marketplace visuals listed. And you'll be able to take those and use them in your report. Along with this GA, we have a couple of new things about the organizational visuals. The first is that they are supported and published to web. And additionally, there is support for your admin, Power BI admin, to update the visual package and disable visuals as well. So make sure to check out this part of the custom visual store and see if your admins have given you any organizational custom visuals. Moving on to the new custom visuals for this month, the first is Overview by Cloud Scope. This visual is really good about showing list data in a form similar to what you might be used to if you are using Instagram. So you can see a sample here. These are 3 different companies with their biography, number of posts, number of followers, number of people they're following, a picture, and if you can also add things like the URL. So the Microsoft URL is msft.social, and when I click on this, it will take me, it will navigate me to that URL. So if you have data in this format, make sure to give this visual a try. Next up is Icon Map by Altius. And this map is really cool because it lets you show circles or images in circular form in different sizes and also connect those circles together with lines. So let me show you their sample file. So you can see this example has circles throughout the United Kingdom, and there is an icon showing for each of the different circles, and that icon is based off of a size field as well. They have a couple of other examples. So, for example, here is a map with a bunch of circles, and you can see that this visual can handle a lot of data points. You can see there's lots of data points on here. Another example is here's some lines connecting several points with airplanes going between the different points. And so you can imagine being able to have this airplane. You can see that, it started over here and it's about, 3/4 of the way through its journey on its way to the point over here. So hopefully you can see that each of these 3 different examples are very different from each other, which shows the flexibility of this map. It has a lot of different fields. You can, have the course longitude and latitude of the image or dot that you want to show. But also things like, being able to control a solid line and or a dotted line. The size of the icon is controllable by your data, so is the line width and color saturation, even the icon rotation. So everything shown here is completely customizable dynamically based off of your data. And there is, of course, some controls in the formatting pane as well, like the color of the line, its width, what kind of background do you want for your maps. You can pick between a lot of open street maps and also things like Mapbox and Thunder Forest maps as well. So if you have a lot of map data, especially map data where you're going to need to be connecting points between each other, this is definitely a really good option for you to try out. The last custom visual for this month is the Hex Pin Scatter Plot. And this custom visual is a scatter plot that also lets you define hex pins behind all the dots of your scatter, and the shading of those hex pins will be based off of the number of points, the density of those points within that bin. So you can see here in the sample a couple of different options. So this bottom left one is showing just a normal scatter chart with points on it. You can see above it a version with the hex pins on it as well, and you can see the more densely populated areas of the scatter have a darker hex pin than the ones where there's hardly any points at all. And so the density, is being based off of the density of the points. You can also choose to just turn the points off and purely show the hex pins. You can see here that's what happened in this one. There's no points, so you could just hover over it to see the density. So this is really good if you don't care about the actual values and all you care about is the density itself and the distribution of that density. And just by looking at this one, you can see there is also some customization you can do as well. You can control the point saturation as a separate field from the color of the bins. You can, of course, change the color of the bins. There are other formatting options in the pane as well. So, for example, you can choose to control the bin radius. You can control what outline the bins have, if they have any at all. And, this is a really good custom visual for being able to show not only the individual points between 2 different measures, but also the density of those points as well. For data connectivity, we have 3 updates for this month. The first of which is that the Adobe Analytics connector is now generally available. We are very happy with this announcement in this connector, which has been developed in partnership with Adobe. It's been in preview since December of 2017, so we're very excited that we can finally GA it. It's not a beta, you don't have to turn on any preview features, it's just there for you to use. And as a reminder of how the flow goes for using this connector, you'll be able to select it from the Online Services category under Get Data, and you'll put in your credentials for Adobe Analytics, so your Adobe ID account credentials. And then from there, once we have a connection with them, you'll be able to preview and select multiple dimensions and measures within the Navigator dialog to create a single tabular output. And of course, as part of the selection, you can also provide any necessary input parameters for the selected items. And once you're done with that, it's just like any other connector in the desktop. You can choose to directly load your query and go on with all of your other modeling and report creation tasks, or you can go in and edit that using the query editor. Next up is an SAP HANA connector improvement. This month we're letting you specify explicitly the port you want to use in order to connect to an SAP HANA server. In previous releases, the port could be specified as part of the server input field. However, the default port, when not specified, would not distinguish between single container and multi-container SAP HANA servers. With this feature enhancement, you'll be able to now specify what type of SAP HANA server you want to connect to and get an optimized port default for it, or alternatively select the custom option to specify a different port number. Lastly, a new connector this month allows you to connect to the Dynamics 365 Business Center, which was previously known as the Dynamics 365 for Financials. And this new connector can be found under the Online Services category in the Get Data dialog. And this connector is also now generally available for everyone to use. No preview feature or beta required. That's all for this month. Make sure to give all of these new features a try and let us know what you think in the comments.